Alright, sixth graders, you have a new assignment this week, and I left a message on Google Classroom that I was going to record the first couple of selections for you this week. And so I'm going to try to do this in my van because I have nothing in my house that plays a CD, and I actually have each of these selections on a CD. So I thought it would be easier if I showed you some things in the book and kind of pointed out a few things as the CD is playing and tried it a different way. So we'll see how this works. So you should open your textbooks to page 188. This part is actually not recorded. This is just a little bit of background information, and it talks about scientists at work. And the type of scientists that they're talking about here is highlighted over here in yellow. Paleontologists are scientists who study prehistoric life. They often collect fossils of extinct animals such as dinosaurs. Working in teams, they gather specimens or individual parts of dinosaurs. They hope the specimens will help them to prove or disprove a theory. In Dinosaur Ghosts, scientists investigate an amazing discovery at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico. You will read about how they test various hypotheses or scientific suggestions based on evidence found there. And so there are some pictures that go along with that. This picture right here, you'll have to look at your book because I don't think I can hold this up where you can see it and read it very well. So get your book if you don't have it. It's on page 188 and 189. A paleontologist's tools include hammers, brushes, and chisels. And so in this picture, you can see some of the paleontologists or their team kind of chipping away or brushing away. They have to be very careful because the bones are old and brittle. Then, actually, this caption is pointing to him. So he's actually showing the hammer and the chisel, and then there's a brush there. So I messed that up. This, see how important it is to pay attention to those arrows? This caption is actually pointing out to this picture. So it says here, scientists work in a large excavation, and there's your important keyword there because it's highlighted in yellow and it's bold. They carefully note the arrangement of the bones before removing them for further study. This picture, this girl who looks really happy, she is a scientist. It says a scientist examines fossils of turtle shells believed to be 65 million years old. So make sure you look at that picture very carefully. It's very interesting. And the last picture down here is sometimes fossils are uncovered by erosion caused by wind or rain. Sometimes they are discovered by geologists, scientists who study the earth. Alright, so then on the next page is the actual book cover. If you were to check this book out of the library, that's what the book cover would look like. But the thing about the textbook is that it takes parts of these books and puts them in for you to, just be a sampling of different types of literature. So, the title is Dinosaur Ghosts, The Mystery of Coelophysis. Everybody say Coelophysis. It's a tricky one. The author is J. Lynette Gillette. Pictures by Douglas Henderson. And then down here's a strategy focus. Hundreds of dinosaurs once died in a small area in New Mexico. As you read about what might have happened, monitor your understanding, clarify difficult parts for reading or reading ahead. And the really good thing about recording this is that you can go back and play it, you can pause it, and do part of it today and part of it tomorrow. It is kind of a long selection. It's actually about 20 minutes. I'm going to cut the heat off in here. It's actually about 20 minutes from start to finish, so I am going to go ahead and do the whole thing today, but if you want to listen to part of it today, the video will still be there for you, so you can come back and do part of it today and part of it tomorrow, which is probably what I would do if we were in the classroom, because it's kind of a lot to get done and get through, okay? So this story is about the mystery of what happened to the dinosaurs that were discovered at Ghost Ranch, and there are different theories. So you'll see first of all, there's kind of like an introduction to what's going on, and then each theory is presented throughout the whole selection, okay? And remember, if you have questions, you can leave comments, send me Google Classroom messages as you're working through your workbook pages. I am still here for you guys, okay? All right, so let's hope this works and hope you can hear. I'm going to play it in my van CD player.
Section 3. Dinosaur Ghosts, The Mystery of Coelophysis by J.
Again, you're going to have to look at your book, because I don't think you're going to be able to read it on here.
There is a saying that the place called Ghost Ranch in New Mexico got its name because each night after dark, its fossils come out of the ground to play. No one has really seen this happen, of course, but if there were such a thing as a dinosaur ghost, the red and green hills of this beautiful ranch would be filled with them. Hundreds of Coelophysis dinosaurs perished together here, in a tangle of necks, tails, arms, and legs. And for years, scientists have been haunted by the question, why did so many little dinosaurs die at Ghost Ranch? To begin to answer that question, we must go back in time to the summer of 1947, when a scientist made a spectacular find.
Follow your book with your eyes.
A big find of small dinosaurs. Edwin Colbert listened carefully to his field assistant's excited report. Bones, lots of very small ones, lay on a hillside in a nearby canyon. Ned Colbert was a paleontologist, a scientist who studies prehistoric life, from the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. His plan was to spend that summer of 1947 collecting fossils in Arizona. On his way to Arizona, Colbert had stopped to take a look around Ghost Ranch, north of Albuquerque, New Mexico. He knew fossils had been collected there years earlier by several other paleontologists. Some of the earlier fossils had been found by a professor named Charles Camp. Most of the bones Camp discovered were from animals that had lived during the Triassic period of the Earth's history, which lasted from 245 to 208 million years ago. Every fossil discovery was faithfully recorded in Camp's field diary. In this same diary, Camp had mentioned his fantasy of the fossils coming out to dance at night. None of Camp's fossils had ever been found in the canyons of Ghost Ranch. But Ned Colbert had an open mind about the canyons. Whenever people asked him his secret for finding fossils, he answered, "Fossils are where you find them, and you find them in the darndest places." He decided to investigate his assistant's report. Colbert and his two helpers followed a trail of bone uphill.
Yeah.
When the trail ended, the men dug into the hill, and dinosaur skeletons began appearing. The team had found Coelophysis, a meat-eating dinosaur about the size of a dog. Colbert wasn't the first to find this little dinosaur. Back in the 1880s, paleontologist Edward D. Cope hired a fossil collector to find bones for him in northern New Mexico. Traveling with a sure-footed burro, this fossil hunter discovered bits of backbones, a hip bone, a shoulder bone, and the end of a leg bone of a small reptile. Cope said the fragile bones were those of a new small dinosaur. He named it Coelophysis, hollow form, to suggest its hollow bones. The discovery didn't receive much publicity. Cope turned to other projects, and few people thought about this little dinosaur for nearly 70 years.
Okay, we're at the top of one.
But in the summer of 1947, Colbert's team began finding dozens and dozens of Coelophysis skeletons, buried in 225-million-year-old rocks from near the end of the Triassic period. There were so many skeletons that Colbert had to send a telegram back to the American Museum to ask for more help with the excavation. This was a great find. Most dinosaurs are known from just a few specimens. Up until that time, the most familiar small dinosaurs were two chicken-sized Compsognathus skeletons. In a few days, the New York Times announced the discovery of Coelophysis on its front page. A photographer from Life magazine visited the site. Coelophysis became the best-known small dinosaur ever discovered. But why were all those dinosaurs buried in one place? Colbert wasn't sure. With Ghost Ranch's permission, he cut blocks of rock with the bones still inside to take to New York for study. Because the dinosaurs were packed so tightly together, the blocks were made extra large to avoid cutting through a skeleton. Each block weighed a ton or more. Blocks of bone were shared with other museums and universities around the United States for examination. And new paleontologists joined the study of Coelophysis.
All right, I'm going to try to pause that for just a minute. A couple things I wanted to point out for first of all, the New York Times up here is italicized, and letting you know what that could be. Sometimes italics is something you're supposed to emphasize or say with emphasis. Sometimes it's the name, like the name of the Theophysis is in italics, but this is actually newspaper title. So sometimes titles of magazines or newspapers are written in italics because to indicate that they stand out or there's something different about them. So pay attention to that. And then down here's a caption. This caption is actually above the picture. It says the Colbert candidates lack over 1 4 bones. You have to be super careful because they are very fragile. And you can't just get in there with a big old hammer and start knocking away at the rocks. They have to go very carefully. That's why these excavations take time. All right, so now we're at the top of 194. And again, you need to be following in your book because it's probably really hard for you to see this when I'm trying to hold it up for you. It's hard to get it close enough and focused enough for you to see it. I'm just trying to like help you see it. All right, back to the top of 194.
Bone studies. Over the next 50 years, a more complete picture of coelophysis emerged. Paleontologists saw that the living animal had been a carnivore, or meat eater. Its teeth were sharp along the edges, much like a steak knife, perfect for slicing. Short front legs with sharp claws helped to hold the dinosaur's prey, but the long, flexible neck and strong jaws did most of the work. They were lively, graceful animals, built for speed. The long, slender leg bones allowed coelophysis to run upright, much like an African secretary bird does today. And much like a bird, coelophysis had fragile, thin bones. If a technician working on coelophysis sneezed, small bone fragments would fly into the air. Inside the whole length of each thin leg and arm bone was a very wide space called the marrow cavity, where red blood cells were made. Active animals need plenty of red blood cells to carry oxygen. Scientists think coelophysis may have lived in large family groups, possibly in herds. We know that the young stayed with the adults for several years because all ages except embryos in eggs and newborn hatchlings have been found at Ghost Ranch. They probably ate other reptiles, such as young phytosaurs, which resembled alligators, plus fish, crayfish, clams, and in some cases even their own kind. 2 skeletons of coelophysis have their last meal still in the belly, small bones of a young coelophysis. Some reptiles today still have this habit of cannibalism. Unlike many other Triassic reptiles, coelophysis dinosaurs had no armor to shield them from predators. Instead, speed and agility gave an advantage to coelophysis when facing a hungry, armored phytosaur. Large eyes also may have helped coelophysis find prey, even in the dim light of early morning and evening, when more sluggish reptiles might be napping. What?
Okay, so I'm going to pause it here because there's kind of a shift. I can talk. Maybe I can't because I cannot get my camera. This is my laptop. So, anyways, I'll act like I'm in the shadows or something. So there's a shift here because there's this heading that says what happened here. So all of this first part was kind of just information about the coelophysis, and it describes the kind of size and shape and all kinds of different things that they found as they were beginning to study. And now they want to figure out what happened here. Why were they killed? And why were their bones discovered this way? So now this next heading will begin to ask some questions, and then we'll move into some possible theories. Pay attention to your headings. They are clues. Remember that.
After studying the coelophysis bones to learn what these dinosaurs were like when they were alive, the scientists turned their attention to the positions of the bones in the ground. The arrangement of the bones might give some clues to the mystery of what happened to all these dinosaurs. Why and how did they die? Many nearly complete skeletons were found with almost all their bones still joined together. These skeletons lay flat on their sides, with their heads, tails, hands, and feet all at about the same level. When these dinosaurs died, strong muscles in their necks tightened and pulled the neck and head back in a curve toward the tail. In a different arrangement, some skeletons had missing bones and also were separated. Necks were no longer joined to bodies, tails were not attached to hips, ribs did not touch backbones. These bones had no unusual breaks or tooth marks, so we know the skeletons weren't scattered by predators. All the skeletons, the nearly complete ones, stretched out on their sides, and the separated ones lay close together. Some were even piled on top of one another. Other animals were discovered with the coelophysis skeletons, a few fish, phytosaurs, small members of the crocodile family, and a very small lizard. The place where all these animals were buried is about 30 feet long and at least 30 feet wide. Around the bones are red rocks made of mud once carried by an ancient river. Looking closely at the skeletons, paleontologists could see that none of the bones of any of the dinosaurs or the other animals seemed to be cracked from drying a long time in the sun. After considering this fact and all the other clues from the bones, the scientists have suggested a number of possible scenes that might explain the coelophysis burial ground at Ghost Ranch. We can test these scientific suggestions or hypotheses by comparing them with the evidence found in the bones and the rocks around them.
Okay, I'm going to pause it again because this is a good connection to make with what you all did in science. Every scientist has to come up with possible theories or computer sliding, like a hypothesis or just an educated guess about what's going on. And you guys, when you did your science fair projects, you had a theory and you had to test some different hypotheses to see what worked. How did it turn out? And so that's what they're about to do. So the first hypothesis is stuck in the mud. So they're going to examine, is it possible that these dinosaurs were in a position where, they were traveling or moving or just living, and all of a sudden the environment changed and perhaps they were stuck in mud. I'm sure we've all had a situation where we've been walking in mud. If you haven't, I have before, and I remember when I was young and I was walking in mud and my shoe got stuck in the mud, so I thought I was going to be sinking, and I started panicking, and I tried to pull myself out and my shoe stayed, but I got free, so I had to come back later when the ground got a little bit harder and retrieve my shoe because I had to kind of get out of the middle of this huge area where there was mud. I just have that memory in my mind. So let's see if this is a theory that holds true. Stuck in the mud.
Stuck in the mud? A coelophysis steps to the river's edge, coming to feed on several fish that are splashing in a pool of water. The dinosaur's feet sink deep in the dark, sticky earth. Other dinosaurs gather, also attracted by the splashing fish, but they too are caught in the treacherous ground. No matter how hard they struggle, they are all trapped, young and old alike. The La Brea tar pits in California were once the site of scenes like this one. Thousands of animals were trapped there in sticky pools of black tar during the ice ages. Did a similar thing happen at Ghost Ranch? Probably not. If the dinosaurs had been trapped in mud, as they struggled, their heavier legs would be buried more deeply than their arms and heads, and their bodies would be upright. This is what scientists believe happened to a Triassic dinosaur from Europe called Plateosaurus that died after being trapped in mud. Since so many coelophysis were found lying on their sides, most likely they didn't die this way. Volcanic violence? The little dinosaurs are surprised by an erupting volcano as they gather at a river's edge to eat. They cannot breathe in the hot, swiftly moving clouds of ash and sulfurous gases. In great panic, they fall down as they scramble to escape. Soon they are buried by mudslides flowing down the river valley and by ash falling from the sky. Many of the Earth's great catastrophes have been caused by erupting volcanoes. When Mount St. Helens in Washington state blew its top in 1980, animals that couldn't run or burrow into the earth were killed by the heat, ash, and poisonous gases. Does the scene at Ghost Ranch fit this picture? It doesn't seem likely to the geologists who have begun to study the rocks in which the coelophysis skeletons are buried. If there were even traces of volcanic ash under the microscope, the rocks would have a few tiny smashed bubbles of the mineral silica. This silica would be present in the fiery blobs of ash shot into the sky. But no collapsed silica bubbles have been found yet in the rocks.
Okay, so I just wanted to stop again. This is the second theory of volcanic violence, just an alliteration. Remember? So the interesting thing about the way they set this up is they give you the theory, they give you why it could have happened, and then they also explain that it can't happen that way. So be sure that you are paying attention to each one of these. So some of these theories sound like they could work, and then there's a reason why they can't. But I think eventually, toward the end, you'll see exactly what they have come up with as their best possible theory. So the next one is called asteroids from outer space. So this is the next theory of what could have happened to these coelophysis.
Asteroids from outer space? The sun isn't as bright as usual because high gray dust clouds shield the Earth. The animals that the coelophysis dinosaurs usually eat are becoming hard to find. The dinosaurs have become very thin. Their scales are dull. Their tails, normally carried high, are drooping. Weak and exhausted, the dinosaurs fall one by one and do not get up. Scientists Walter and Luis Alvarez of the University of California have suggested a reason why dinosaurs became extinct around 65 million years ago. The Alvarezes said that maybe a huge asteroid falling out of orbit from outer space struck the Earth. The collision would have sent great clouds of dust into the air that blocked sunlight and cooled the Earth. A cooler Earth couldn't support the same kinds of plants and animals. Many species that needed warm temperatures would die. Not all paleontologists accept this reason for the extinction of dinosaurs, but it is an attractive one. A small amount of a rare element, iridium, has been found in many 65-million-year-old rocks. Asteroids often have more iridium than Earth rocks, so an asteroid may indeed have brought this element to Earth. Could an earlier asteroid, 225 million years ago, have caused climatic changes that killed coelophysis? The facts don't fit this picture at Ghost Ranch. The dinosaurs aren't scattered over a large area, as they would be if they collapsed, one by one, from hunger. And so far, no one has found unusual amounts of iridium in the rocks. Asteroid extinctions don't seem to agree with what we have learned about coelophysis.
Okay, so it sounds like this theory is proven wrong. So just like your doctor protested when you had a theory, a hypothesis, and then you tested it, and it didn't work. You had to figure out what's another one of yours could work. So this explains why this theory could possibly be the one that answers what happened to the dinosaurs. Because first of all, they are scattered over large areas. They would be if they collapse one by one from hunger. And so far, no one has found amounts of iridium in the rocks. Asteroid extinctions, they do happen, apparently, but they don't seem to agree with what the scientists learned about the coelophysis. So the next theory is what? Poison water? Is that your story? Yeah, poison water. Continue.
Poisoned water? A group of coelophysis gathers at a spring-fed pool of water along the river's edge. Balancing on their small front legs, they crouch down and drink, unaware that the water is poisoned. In a short time, one by one, they fall to the ground and die. Others come the next day, and the same thing happens again. Do we find any poisons in the bones or the rocks around the dinosaur graveyard at Ghost Ranch? If the dinosaurs were killed this way, some poisons might remain, even after millions of years. Geologists have tested the rocks, and they did find a poison, arsenic, in both the rocks and the bones. But there are two problems with this theory. First, We can't know exactly when the arsenic got into the bones and rocks. Just because arsenic is in the bones now doesn't mean that it was there when the dinosaurs died. The arsenic might have seeped in, carried by underground water many years later. And there's another idea to consider. Phytosaurs and fish were found with the dinosaurs. Could they have survived in a poisoned water hole? Poison that would kill dinosaurs would probably make the water unfit for other animals too, especially ones that had to live in the water. For this reason, arsenic doesn't seem to fit what we know either. A fearsome flood?
Here's another theory.
A group of Coelophysis dinosaurs sleep in their resting area, away from the riverbank under tall evergreen trees. It has been raining for days. This night, the rising water spills over the top of the river channel and rushes down a wide valley. Coelophysis groups from many areas wake and begin to run, but the water is too fast. They are caught up and drowned by the churning flood. A few dinosaurs who run up the valley instead of down are saved. Soon the rain clouds pass and the river returns to its old channel. Down the valley rest the bodies of hundreds of dinosaurs, with a few phytosaurs, fish, and other reptiles. They are wrapped together, necks over tails, one on top of the other. The rains aren't finished yet. Another tropical storm begins, and the river floods again. New mud and water flow into the old riverbed and cover the dinosaurs before other predators arrive. The tangled positions and good condition of the skeletons, no cracks from the sun, no tooth marks from predators, might well have been caused by a flood. After the dinosaurs drowned, they could have been thrown together by a rush of floodwater and mud and buried quickly. But if this is true, how to explain those dinosaur skeletons that were found on their sides with the necks curved toward the tails? This position happens only if a dead animal, such as a cow lying in a field, is undisturbed long enough for its muscles and ligaments to shrink. Why were these dinosaurs arranged differently than the rest? Even the suggestion of a flood doesn't fit all the clues. Water worries? The sun has burned in a cloudless sky for days and days. Ponds, streams, and lakes are drying up. Plants are dying. Plant eaters are starving. Crayfish are burrowing deep into mud to wait for wetter days. Fish are trapped by the hundreds in ever smaller puddles. Coelophysis gather to scoop up the helpless fish, but even more than meat, the dinosaurs need water. As more fish are trapped, more Coelophysis of all ages come to eat, but the feeding activity doesn't last. The dinosaurs are weak with hunger and thirst, and there isn't enough food or drink to satisfy everyone. Hundreds die as they crowd around the last of the puddles. When paleontologists began looking at the rocks around the bones of these dinosaurs, they sometimes found mud cracks, suggesting that some of the animals died on sun-baked mud. The skeletons with the curved necks were arranged like any animal who dries out in the hot sun after death. Most of the fish bones were underneath the dinosaurs, as if they had attracted the little hunters to the site. And the scientists found many places where crayfish had burrowed into the mud. But the drought picture does not tell the whole story. We already know that the dinosaurs' bones were not cracked by drying a long time in the sun. What if they spent only a short time, just a few days, in the sun? The real picture may be a combination of two suggestions, a drought and a flood.
All right, let me stop it for just a second. So now there's another shift here because all these theories have led to new information, I guess, that we're putting together. And it says that the picture may be a combination of two suggestions, a drought and a flood. So a drought is what? It's a lack of rain or water. And a flood is way too much. So that's going to be an interesting combination of factors because those two things are put together, then there's something we want to know about here. So the next heading is too little water, then too much. So that sounds a lot like a drought, a little water, then too much is a flood. So let's see how they put their facts together here for this section.
Too little water, then too much. Many of the little dinosaurs die at the end of a dry season, when the earth is baked and the water holes are dry. One day the coelophysis that are still alive discover a few sickly fish swimming slowly back and forth in a puddle at the bottom of the riverbed. Other fish bodies have already sunk into the mud. When a sudden rainstorm breaks the drought, a surge of water and thick mud flows swiftly over the riverbanks and down the valley. Coelophysis and other predators are trapped in the flood and drown. When the waters dry up, they leave behind both the dinosaurs that had died a few days earlier in the drought and the newly drowned dinosaurs. Some are dropped in tangles, some lie alone, stretched out on the mud. The ones that lie in puddles begin to separate. Those outside the puddles begin to dry and shrink. Soon fresh rains bring more mud. The dinosaurs are buried completely in a few days, and they stay that way for millions of years. They are not uncovered until erosion in a canyon removes their blanket of rock in 1947. This is our best idea for what happened to coelophysis on those fateful days over 200 million years ago. We can't say for sure that it is the right answer, but it's the explanation that fits most of the clues Ned Colbert and other scientists have discovered so far. Could more information turn up that might point us toward a whole new scene? Of course, since the site is still being studied. Scientists are always ready to change their ideas to fit what they learn. New discoveries about the fossils and rocks at Ghost Ranch can still be made by anyone with the patience to study them, and the luck to find them in the darndest places.
For a moment. I feel like I'm kind of like in the shadow here because the sun came out and now I have to shield myself or I'm blinded. Okay, I'll hold it up like that. Anyway, I am in my van, see, because I do not have a CD player and I had to use my CDs. So, as you're thinking about this, do you think this is fiction or nonfiction? Definitely nonfiction because you have factual information. So remember, as you are working on your workbook pages, to go back and use your book. This is recorded, so you'll get to come back and listen to parts of the story again if you need to. But again, feel free to ask me questions if you get to something and you don't understand it. Just take your time. Again, as the beginning of this, I said to watch it in two parts and don't feel like you have to do everything at one time. So pace yourself and keep, um, keep yourself calm and do a little bit at a time. And I will talk to you later for the next recording, maybe in my van again. Hope you're all having a good day and staying healthy. I miss you all so much.